Thank you for joining us today for the SCOM-a-thon webinar. Today we're going to be talking with Viacode on monitoring SQL Server with SCOM and the SQL Server management packs. Today is September 29th, 2020. I'm your host, Shawn Williams. I'll introduce the panelists in just a moment. But before we get started, please, if you want to join the conversation, you can chat with us in the webinar chat window, also on Slack at the following address. Even after the webinar, you can chat with us. That way we'll follow up with you if we can. Today's panel, Victor and Alex from Viacode, and I'm your host, Shawn Williams from SquaredUp. Let's get started. So Alex, Victor, can you hear me?
Hey, Shawn. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. My name is Victor, and I guess I give a little bit of background who is Viacode. Viacode has been around for over 20 years. It's a predecessor company called Avicode, started with enterprise software development back in early 2001. Over the years, we developed some monitoring technique that we later incorporated in a product and formed another company in 2004, and the product was called Avicode Intercept Studio. Maybe some of you have heard about that. Later, we OEM'd part of that to Microsoft in 2005, MOM 2005, then to Quest Fog Light in 2007. And then Microsoft acquired a company, well, part of that product, and in 2010, and my partner Alex Zakhanov and I moved to Redmond with a team as part of that acquisition, and we incorporated Avicode Intercept Studio into a System Center Operations Manager as a .NET and Java monitoring management packs. I was running SCOM team as a group program manager for some time, and then I moved to Azure Group and started Azure Application Insights over there. So in the meantime, Avicode has been renamed after that purchase acquisition to Viacode. So a couple characters has been swapped. And in addition to enterprise software development, Viacode has been working very closely with Microsoft on various projects around management and monitoring, including majority of management packs. And today we'll be talking about some of the management packs, SQL management packs that we've been developing for Microsoft on behalf of Microsoft.
Cool, thank you, Victor. You mentioned management packs. Do you do others also?
We do Azure Stack. We've done, I believe, and Alex can chime in, but we've done many like base OS management packs, IAS management packs. So most likely, yeah, most of management packs that you're using, we've done for Microsoft.
Excellent. All right, that's excellent news, and we'll post some information at the end of the webinar about you guys, so people can go find out more information. But like you said, let's dig into the SQL packs. So specifically, what are the SQL packs? And then another lead-in, we also have the new Azure SQL Managed Instance pack. So wanted to call that out for a minute. But can you tell us about the SQL management packs? Like, what was its history? What were the goals or the focus? Where did it start?
Management pack is, at some point, it was a requirement for any Microsoft server products. As part of common engineering criteria, every server product that Microsoft ships must have a management pack. So SQL was no exceptions. And over the years, SQL team has invested into various management packs. And until recently, until 2017, essentially every release of SQL, we've been building a separate MP. And the goal for the MP management pack was to expose health monitoring metrics, health monitoring of the SQL box. So SCOM admins, operators, could see vital parameters of SQL, and if something goes wrong, they would be able to detect and quickly triage the problem. So SCOM management packs were designed to detect problems and alert about those problems to admins who can do some corrective actions. With respect to SQL, I think the turning point, the big change happened in 2017, and at that time we were supporting 2005, 8, 12, 14, 16 management packs. In 2017, SQL shipped SQL on Linux, and that change fundamentally required to change the way we monitor SQL, because it's Linux monitoring is agentless monitoring. So we had to come up with a different class hierarchy. So no longer we could use computer and then see all the roles that are running on that computer. We had to come up with something different.
Okay, so so this is why we had packs for each version, and then and so then this is the start, the germination of the agnostic pack. Then why the class structure changed a little bit between the older versions and the newer version.
That's correct. So basically, at that time we had to make a decision, and it was we know it was not very popular decision, but we had to support simultaneously two different versions of SQL running on Windows and on Linux. And we made a decision to create a essentially version agnostic MP starting 2017. And at first, we shipped management packs that was supporting 17 plus. Then later, based on the feedback, we realized that we need to go down and started supporting from 12 and up.
Okay, so that way that you didn't have to run both the old packs and the new. Actually, I don't know if you can run both packs.
That's correct. So the idea is with a version agnostic management packs, it would significantly simplify the management and maintenance going forward. We realized that transitioning was a big deal because you had to rewrite all your overrides, all your custom solutions to a new hierarchy. But going forward, I think it will benefit everyone. It will benefit customers as a result of simplification of the that harness, overrides, etc. And it would simplify our, quite frankly, our test matrix as well, and support matrix.
So you mentioned it briefly, but I just want to highlight it. When we were talking on our prior discussion, you mentioned to me that Microsoft makes a really strong effort to make sure that you're always backwards compatible with everything. And so when you guys did this, this was a change that you did not make lightly. In other words, you really thought about how this was going to affect the community, affect the support model, everything. I mean, a lot of comments here is like, why did they do it? I just wanted to call that out because I think that was really important that you guys are aware of that issue.
Oh, absolutely. The backward compat is a key priority for all teams at Microsoft, including SQL. And there were a lot of debates, heated debates, whether we will break backward compat or we move forward. And I just wanted to mention something as well. The realization was not only we need to improve and support agentless monitoring, but as we migrated to version agnostic management packs, we fundamentally changed some of the underpinning of the management packs. For example, we significantly decreased the reliance on WMI, and I'm sure that Shawn, as we talked before, you had those issues with MOF, and what we did, we basically still rely on WMI for discovery, but once we discover SQL running on a box, we use SQL APIs, essentially DMV, to retrieve all the metrics like perf counters. And I'm sure that a lot of admins can appreciate that in the past, when something goes wrong with MOP, you have to essentially reset to, if you will, quote unquote, factory defaults. Well, starting this new management packs, that was one of the design goals. We wanted to simplify maintenance of those management packs, and we made that transition as well. So it was not just to support, I don't know, Linux, SQL on Linux boxes, or to simplify the going forward maintenance of your overrides, but we also changed a lot inside the SQL pack.
Cool. Okay.
Like transitioning to WMI, yeah, that was important.
Yes. I, for one, had significant issues with WMI in my old shop. We had a weird problem where WMI counters would just sometimes disappear. And so it became a thing for us that if monitoring stopped, we checked WMI, oh, there it was, and fixed it. So that's very nice. And so relatedly, there's other SQL technologies like SSRS, SSAS, and IS. And for those that are not familiar with those terms, what is it? Integration services, analytics services, and reporting services. So there were those related management packs. Are those in the pipeline? Or I think some of those are available today.
Yeah, I believe that most of them are available. Alex, correct me if I'm wrong. I think there is one for application services that we are about to release by the end of this year, beginning of the next year. But the rest of the set of management packs, I believe, already transitioned to this version agnostic paradigm. Alex?
Yeah, just one thing. We updated almost all management packs. I mean, integration services, replication, analysis service stuff. And we have the only management pack to present in this version agnostic paradigm is replication, SQL replication management pack. And we're gonna present it in the end of this year or maybe early next year. So these are our plans.
And we recommend in general to transition to this new MPs because we, with every version, we fix issues. So transitioning to new MP would guarantee you to be always up to date with the most recent thinking of our team and SCOM team and SQL team.
Okay, and I want to call that out because, again, one of those points we talked about, but we no longer have monitoring for 2008 and 2008 R2 because those have been end of life. But you did make the pack instead of going from 2017 so back to 2012. So there's really not much reason other than the fact that they got to transition all their overrides to the new agnostic pack. But once you're in the agnostic pack, updating is going to be a lot easier. There's a forward-looking statement there. And it's also, I've noticed with the agnostic packs, a lot easier to manage. And we'll talk about this in a minute, but then there's like some of the posts by Kevin Holman about setting up the run as accounts and things like that.
Yeah.
Something related to this, and I want to kind of call it out. When we were talking prior, just to get the webinar off the ground, you mentioned the SQL Assessment API. I had not heard of that prior, and you guys thought it was kind of important. Can you explain to our audience what that is and why you think that's still important?
Yeah. So kind of before we dive into SQL Assessment API, I kind of want to bubble up and talk about a little bit of theory. So the SCOM SQL Management Pack is designed for monitoring. So in other words, it has a health model that detect failure states and alert you when something goes wrong. That's essentially a runtime monitoring. But before you do the runtime monitoring, you configure your box, configure your SQL. And SQL Assessment API allow you to, SQL Assessment basically, what it does, it allow you to validate whether your configuration, in other words, design time, adheres the best practices. So I think this is both worlds. One, from the design time perspective, SQL assessment will give you recommendations what needs to be improved from the config perspective, and operations manager SQL MP tells you if something's wrong operationally at the runtime. So a SQL assessment API is designed to help you set up and configure your SQL box correctly. And we recommend everyone to try it out. I don't know, Shawn, if we have a link to it, but you can definitely Google it.
Actually, I did put a link in one of the later slides. So
okay,
because I thought it was interesting, because for me, I always look at SQL monitoring from the real time. Here's what's going on. But when you explained it to me, I did the more research on it. It was like, okay, when your DBA team is starting to set things up or they want to do that health check, that's when this was really key. And I liked the direction. I liked hearing about it. It's something that was new to me. It was like on the roadmap for the monitoring team to just be aware of. Here it's coming. It's not there today, but it's something that's on the road.
So we recommend, actually, since you mentioned the DBA team versus monitoring team, I think this could be in between those two teams. And I certainly agree with your assertion that a monitoring team should be aware of that of that API.
So, that's another good point for me. Bringing up the DBA team versus the monitoring team. When I was working with other SQL teams, there was always that interest in having specialized DMV monitoring or pulling out particular extended events. Anything like that on the roadmap, perchance?
Alex could speak more about that. We don't hear a lot of feedback on the extended events. Interesting enough, we did implement ability as part of SQL Azure management packs. We did implement ability to expose monitors and metrics, custom metrics as part of management packs, but that feature we didn't port back into SQL MP. And actually, it would be interesting to hear feedback from the community if this is something that folks would be interested. But right now, that feature is available only as part of SQL Azure management pack.
Okay, we have a couple of slides coming up about how they can get feedback to you guys. So, yeah, but that's a good point, and it's interesting to hear you talk about the community, because I think a lot of times people just assume Microsoft knows what they want, but they're not hearing from the community. So there's this, we're going to give you what we think, but we need that feedback loop. So we'll talk about that in a moment. So I guess let's take a moment here and let's jump to the next slide, which let's talk about the SQL Server dashboards that are in the management packs, because that's something that I think a lot of admins don't notice. And I think they're pretty powerful. Just right out of the box, you get a lot of interesting and new dashboards. And this is the SQL Server instance dashboard. This is from my landscape at SquaredUp. So we had a couple instances here. So right now I'm highlighted on the CS SQL 01 instance. But when I was working with the SQL admins, this was pretty cool because they could see everything pretty much right at a glance. We have some trending here, which is also something you don't normally see in SCOM. Although the data is there, you just don't normally see it. Is there any, like, when you guys were designing this, what was kind of like your motivation? Was there anything that you just wanted to do something different, or this was just something that you heard and this is?
Yeah. These dashboards have been designed as a feedback because we wanted to implement a better visualization for admins, kind of ad hoc analysis of what's going on with the box, and at the time existing facilities of SCOM were not up to the task. So SQL team did invest a lot of time into development of this solution. As a matter of fact, we did implement it in a way that it benefits not only the SQL, although we do provide out of the box SQL monitoring dashboards, but for that matter, any metrics, any type of monitoring can be extended using this visualization library.
Oh, excellent. I was aware that, in fact, I have a slide coming up about how to add or remove a widget or tile from the screen. But the extending it to other things, that's really interesting news, because then if people were spending most of their time in the console, they could leverage these dashboards for their own metrics to present custom dashboards, in other words.
Yeah.
Another good reason to implement that. Good. So let me jump forward to the next slide. So this was the SQL instances. Here's the databases. Again, I thought this was really nice because you can click on a database, you get the class that you're looking at, path, whether or not your auto-grow is set, the owner, recovery mode, and then just the basic stuff right out of the box. And you can see at a glance, green is being monitored, your blues are your rules, but there's no monitoring going on. And here are some of the monitors that are either turned on or not turned on. I just thought that was really pretty awesome. And I even had a screenshot of a Linux instance. Now, my Linux instance was pretty idle, but at least it had one warning, so I could show some warnings here.
Yeah.
This one, we hadn't updated it, so it's behind on one of the packs.
Compliance, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it wasn't much to see here, but it was at least nice to see it. So yeah.
Right,
nice.
and this is another example. It would be really good. We believe that this is a really cool feature. We believe, but and we've heard when we were designing it, we were working with customers, and for those customers that we were working with, they were using those dashboards pretty extensively. However, we haven't heard a lot of feedback, so it would be nice to start collecting more feedback on the dashboards, on the directions, and in general, feedback on the dashboards versus the reports, and where community feels we should be investing more time. And thank you for this, by the way, webinar. This is our opportunity to ask these questions and maybe get a feedback from the community.
Good. Well, like I said, we're going to talk about the feedback loop, and then hopefully we can get some conversation going. So I mentioned a slide ago about how you can edit this. So put together just a quick animation. So when you're looking at a particular dashboard, in the upper right-hand corner, there's like a little hamburger menu where you can click and say add group, virtual group, performance tile. So what I did here was wanted to add a performance tile. When I click performance tile, this dialog shows up in the middle of the screen. And again, what was really cool is you can click the performance rule. It would drop down everything that was available. And there was a lot of performance rules that were available. And if there was a related monitor, the size that I wanted. So in this particular case, I just wanted something that I knew was there. It is duplicating what is already there, but I knew it was there. I knew that I had some data and I knew what I was getting. So it was kind of like one of those examples. I chose number of lock weights per second, and then I kept the display name because I could have changed it. And I chose a 2x1, and then I clicked add, which then added this tile to that dashboard. So now when I click on another object, that new tile was added to the dashboard. So that was really key for me when I was working with the database team, because then if there was something that they were interested in for whatever reason, I could add it to the dashboard fairly quickly. So that was really cool. And then I just want to highlight, so it said in the bottom left, your configuration is being saved, and then it added it. And then there's a particular location where these are saved. It's documented in the documentation. Off the top of my head, I can't remember where that was. Yeah, it was fairly easy. I really like this. It was nice, and including the default ones you can remove also. I thought that was really nice. Something else that was included in the management pack was a pretty cool new report, database file space usage. I think the reports are, in my opinion, underutilized by SCOM administrators. I think just the fact that you guys took the time to do something like this was really nice, because I mean, you get some really great information right out of the gate.
Yeah, that was the goal, is to help admins to understand the trends. Like you said, SCOM has a lot of trending data, and you could utilize that data for your kind of capacity analysis. We did invest some into the reporting infrastructure, and again, it would be interesting to hear feedback, whether SCOM admins use this report what they like, what they don't like about it, and in general, if they don't use this report, what do they use?
Okay. Well, you know what? Thank you for the lead in. How can the SCOM community influence the SQL packs? So let's actually talk about that. What influences the design and direction? I mean, how does the feedback loops start?
Yeah. Well, first of all, one of the biggest influences is the SQL itself. It's as I mentioned, it's part of CEC, Common Engineering Criteria, to release management packs with every SQL version, which means that we will release MP soon after, or the time of the release of SQL. At the same time, we rely on feedback of the community for feature development, and I would say there are two different streams. One is new feature requests and suggestions, recommendations, and bugs reports. So for the first one, for the recommendations, we recommend people to use System Center Ops Manager user voice. That is pretty effective if you want to go through SCOM PM team, then it goes to SQL PM team, and then it gets to the engineering team. Another way is to use an email, an alias that I believe we will share as part of this. Using that email alias, the feature request could go directly to our team, to SQL PM team and engineering team. So that's for the feedback on features. Feedback on bugs, the best way is still going through your support channel, because CSS engineers, they're way better equipped to do the repro, and it's much more efficient for our engineering team to work with CSS engineers, because they provide us with complete information how to reproduce the bug, so we can quickly fix it. So again, just to summarize, the SCOM user voice and SQL team alias is for feature request, and CSS is for bugs escalation.
Okay. And in CSS is the customer support service.
Yeah, that's correct. Sorry.
No, you're good. I was one of those. We're so used to the acronym SOUP.
Yeah, it's customer support services. One more as a kind of tip: every time when we do the release and we publish announcement on a blog, we monitor very, very closely feedback, the comments on the blog. So that's an opportunity to get like directly to, I don't know, to Alex. So just the shortcut all the machinery, if you will, because at that time the team is very anxious to hear feedback on the announcement, because we've been working for some time on something and then we release it. So if you want to provide some feedback, writing some comments on the blog, announcement blog, would get direct attention immediately.
It's kind of like it's the hot topic and you just push the hot button.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Cool. And then you mentioned the email address. I do have it on a slide later on, so we'll post that when we get there.
Yep. It's
excellent. That is all good information, because I think sometimes the community in general just doesn't realize, they think that Microsoft is here listening, but they're posting in the wrong places. Which Microsoft only listens to so many channels, and these are the proper channels. And so that's something that if we want to start getting feedback, this is how we do it.
Yep.
So a recurring theme that's come up, we've kind of like hinted at it, is your relationship with Kevin Holman. Know that a lot of times, like, people will complain and they'll post in some crazy places, and then he'll hear it and then he'll post about something. But do you guys have a relationship with Kevin about?
we have a relationship with Kevin, and we recommend everyone to listen to what Kevin is saying, because he is a #1 contributor to SQL MP, and we do review with Kevin, and we listen very closely to his feedback. As a matter of fact, some of his MPs, and I'm sure that most of you are aware about addendum run as issue. As a result of Kevin's involvement, even though we didn't implement that functionality as part of management packs, we took his approach as part of our test matrix. So his approach is now officially tested as part of the testing procedure, test release for every release of SQL management packs. That's pretty important. That was pretty important for big enterprises who wanted to get some kind of official blessing from Microsoft, and here we go. We listened and we implemented it as part of official supported process.
We also should mention, Sir Shawn, that Kevin is now developing management packs, and one of them is mirroring management pack, which is like replacement for the mirroring management pack, which was part of version-specific management pack for SQL Server. And we are not going to release our own management pack for mirroring, because mirroring is like a deprecated feature of SQL Server. And we, as SQL Server management pack team, highly recommend for those who should use mirroring still, to use Kevin Holman's management pack for mirroring.
Good. Okay. So in other words, you guys are going to spend time on the real development issues, but if he can solve it in the field and blog about it, then just follow that blog, because that's what's going to happen.
That's correct. Mirroring is a good example, because official stand is that we don't recommend to use mirroring anymore, but we recognize that some customers, it's a lengthy process to switch, so they need to have a solution, and Kevin's MP is instrumental to do so.
I'm going to jump to the next slide, because when we talked to him, we knew we were going to talk about Kevin. Went ahead and put together a couple of links to some blog posts that he put out. And so you mentioned the SQL. We have the SQL mirroring agnostic pack right at the top.
Yeah.
The run as accounts. The run as accounts, to me, when that came out, that was like the angels started singing, because I didn't have to deal with the run as accounts.
Mm-hmm.
SQL agent jobs. I did that once. It was interesting. It was a good post. So if your SQL admins really want that, that's the way to look at it. But how to transition, database free space monitoring, how it works, that's a really good one, because a lot of times your SQL admins want what they want when they want it, and you can actually just give them that, and it explains it really nice. I was pretty happy about that one. And then how to exclude and use the pack a little bit more. But yeah, these were all some great things. It was always interesting to me that Kevin had all these great insights, but I didn't know what the relationship was with the team. How did that work? Why is it that when he did something, you guys didn't? And now we know. So that's good stuff.
Yeah. He usually tests an early version of our MPs, so we are in a pretty close contact with Kevin.
I will also post these links, so don't worry about pulling them out. They'll be posted in the Slack channel. Of course, the presentation will be shared on our SCOMathon YouTube channel, and there's some other links coming up that we'll also post to the Slack channel, so don't worry about copying these. So we're getting near the end here. So what about, these are some of like the outstanding things that I had questions on. We talked about some SSRS reports. We mentioned the last SSRS report, and we also mentioned the feedback from the community. So wanted to just highlight again, if there is more reporting that's needed, we need more feedback from the community.
Mm-hmm.
One of the other things that we had on our list to talk about was trending or advanced monitoring. And I think you mentioned to me that trending was possible.
Yeah, well, we were talking about like extended monitoring. Extended events are not what we hear a lot of people asking, but as I mentioned, for SQL Azure MP, we did implement ability for you to essentially turn a query into, let's say, an alert, into a monitor or a metric. And I think that is a really cool feature. So if people are asking about extended event, we would like to hear feedback on that feature and whether that would solve, that approach would solve the issue. And like you said, we rely on the feedback. And it's important for us to hear, because that's how prioritization, backlog prioritization goes. So we want to hear feedback and the customer name.
I just want to state that another way, because this is one of those cases where Microsoft builds a tool, goes out into the wild. How people use the tool is what needs to come back so that we can then monitor the tool. And that's the feedback that you need in order to like prioritize what's next. And I just think that sometimes a lot of people forget that. They're like, yeah, here's the tool, and well, people don't know how you're using the tool. That's what needs to come back from the community.
Yeah,
so that's like that call to action.
That's exactly. And one of the example of that is data warehouse data early aggregation rule. When we faced the challenge of dashboard performance, we had to come up with kind of pre-aggregation technique. And initially that rule was turned off by default, but then we heard feedback and we see a lot more customers essentially turning it on anyway. So we at some point turn it on with 4-hour interval window for everybody. That was as a result of us working with the customers and realizing that it is useful and how people use it. And so right now it's turned on by default. As a matter of fact, we recommend you to play with it, but don't run it faster than 15 minutes. But that was one example where feedback from community was instrumental.
I chuckled because you were talking about that, and it was one of the tips or tricks that we had, but I just want to call that out again. And it's the DW, Data Early Aggregation Rule. And if you're running an old version of the pack and you have the SQL dashboards, check to make sure that it's enabled and that you set it to something that is realistic for your environment. So, but if you're running the newest pack, it should be on, just like Victor said. Any other tips or tricks? I know there's one that I personally, because I already know where you're going, but what would you say for your tips or tricks?
Well, I think that one of the key thing is that you need to tune your monitoring. And if you don't use something,
turn it off.
Turn it off.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, the key.
I have to tell you, I knew you were going to say that because we had talked previously, but tuning is such a big issue in the community, because everybody thinks, oh, it's a monitoring tool, we'll just turn all the monitors on, and then you're just drowning in data. If you're not going to use it, turn it off. If you think you're going to turn it on, test, make sure you're going to use it, and then do something with it. Don't just collect it to collect it.
Exactly. And you should think that a SCOM team has this challenge that MP is in a way one size fits all. So you have like a Boeing or Home Depot on one hand with, I don't know, tens of thousands of instances, and some smaller shops with, let's say 100. So you need to come up with a kind of middle ground between the two. So we recommend once you get the MP, really look closely and optimize to what you really need.
Cool. And then you had one other tip, and I chuckled when I read this one, but do you remember your last tip?
So what was it?
Is it about reading the manual?
Oh,
right? Yeah.
Read the That one.
Yeah, we sometimes receive some requests, and it turns out that people don't read manual, which is sometimes it's a big issue because you can use the management pack in the right manner, in the right way. So yeah, it's one of our tip of tricks.
I have to tell you, you say a tip or trick, but it's a real thing. You guys have 3 really nice manuals that come with these management packs. I mean, there's a lot of documentation, there's tips in there, there's things follow up, what's broken, very complete. Most management packs don't do that. And a lot of admins will just download it, they'll import it, and then that's it. I don't think they should do it with these particularly. You definitely read the manual, and there's a lot of neat stuff in there.
Manual was another example of a community feedback. As we hear feedback, when we recognize that something isn't clear, we invest into manual development.
Okay.
Yep. So read the manual.
So we're at the end of our presentation. The next slide is Q&A. If we have time for Q&A, we can take some questions. Or are you guys still good for time?
Us, yes, sure.
Do you have, before we start, do you have any questions? Is there anything else you want to ask the audience, and then we'll ask audience questions?
So I think some of the questions we already touched upon. We would like to hear feedback on reports, on dashboards, on extended monitoring, whether this is something that people feel important to invest into, or anything else that people feel like asking.
Cool. On the slide following the Q&A slide is the contact email and some of the other links. When we get to that, I'll highlight that again. But okay, that's the action item for the community. So questions from the community, we have a couple. It's kind of like stumped by a code today. From Will Jackson, are there any plans to get the dashboard fixed for the web console?
That's a tough question, Will. Currently, we don't have it on our backlog. So the question is whether we will improve our web console compared to our thick client. I think one of the things is customization. Maybe Will can elaborate. Maybe I'm assuming what is he talking about. But I believe customization is the big one.
Okay.
Because those dashboards that you showed are not customizable in a web console. And I think maybe that's what Will is referring to.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
It also may be about an issue with SCOM 2019 update wrap 1, because there was an issue with web dashboards when this SCOM version was released, and we fixed that issue in the latest release of SQL Management Pack. So if that's about this issue, so just update the Management Pack.
Okay, so if Will could kind of confirm that we answered both of his questions.
He says on update rollup 2, he cannot drill down.
Okay, maybe it would be good. We have Alex's email on as part of this this webinar, so it might be good to either send directly to Alex because he's leading the team, or Shawn, you will share the alias.
Yes.
SQL MP's feedback alias with the community, so Will could send it to us and we could dive in.
Sure. Yeah, we'll look into them. Please send it to us.
Cool. Cool. And then so the next question, and you'll have to forgive me because I'm about to murder this name. Viendra, I think it's Viendra. What is the time span of the graphs and the SCOM dashboards? And I thought it was 12 hours, but I could be wrong.
Alex, do you recall that? It was a long time ago.
No.
That was 2017.
We will answer that. Yeah, we'll answer that one in the Slack forum afterwards, because I'm pretty sure that's in the documentation. But,
Yeah.
I remember that off the top of my head.
Yeah, sure, it should be there.
Todd Wolbers, are you able to monitor SSRS services on a server that does not have the engine and SSRS database locally on that server? So if I'm going to reinterpret that, he's running SSRS, but its databases are somewhere else.
Yeah, it should be possible so to install and monitor such SSRS.
Yeah, I was
But-
thinking back in my head. I agree. I think I've done that where SSRS exists on the server, but the databases are somewhere else. Yeah, because you're not running. You can, because that's how you would do a failover or an HA config with SSRS. Okay. From Frederick Herbert, how about adding prefetch recovery task code for the SQL Server services monitors? For example, engine, SSIS, SSRS, or SSAS. Would that add value to the management pack?
Yeah, it's a good request. So we'll be happy to get it and put in our backlog. So
Okay, well, I guess this is the case where we'll give you the email address, send it along.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good feedback. Send it so we'll have a track record.
Joannis Kermantis, I apologize for murdering the name. The SQL Server file space usage report. It is working only for SQL 2017. It sounds like Joannis can only get the report to run for SQL 2017. I'm assuming the report runs for any, yeah, I'm pretty sure it should run.
yeah, it works for any SQL Server supported by the management pack, so 2012 and up.
Okay.
Yeah, I think what might be an issue, you need to monitor your older boxes with that MP.
Okay,
Sure.
so it could be that they're not being monitored at the moment.
Yeah, maybe that's is an issue.
Okay, and then this last question is from Angelo Bastos. Is it possible to use the same management pack twice? Meaning, if we have servers for multiple regions in the same SCOM platform, can each region use the same MP according to the needs of that region? I actually will take this question. I'm assuming you have different management groups.
Yeah, I think
each management group can have a different version of the SQL MP, or it could be configured differently.
Mm-hmm. Most likely those are two management groups, right?
Right. Yeah. So you don't have a problem with multi-homed agents. I guess that's just a question for me. Because I have worked with other management packs that if they were multi-homed, the second management group can't monitor the object because there is an agent on the box that doesn't work. So you're not, that doesn't impact you guys.
Yeah, we know that the management pack work with multi-homed agents, but we don't test this configuration before our releases.
And then we have a new question from Santosh Kumar. Database status monitor throws an alert when database state is online. Why is that the case? Database status monitor throws an alert. That's a good question.
Yeah, but we need more detail.
Yeah. If Santosh, if you could post more of that in the Slack channel, that would be awesome. Maybe we can help you figure that out. We're getting close to the hour mark here, so I'm gonna cut off the Q&A for now. So if there are other questions, go ahead and post them to the Slack channel, and we'll get to them as we can. As I promised, we also have some reference links. So something else that Viacode does for the community is the MP Wiki. If you've not been there, you should go there. I don't know how you guys do it, but I swear every management pack that appears online somewhere, you guys find it, suck it in, and then document it. That's awesome. Here are the links for the SQL management packs, the Azure SQL Database Management Pack, the user voice, although it says SQL Management Pack, it's just the user voice. It's the user voice homepage for the SQL Management Pack. So if you click that link, it will take you to just the feedback section for that pack. And then last, the SQL MP contact email. And this is the email address that will get you right to the team.
My comments, so so people understand the hierarchy of that feedback. You have a SCOM team that monitors and manages, I don't know, 300-400 MPs. That's the user voice for SCOM team. But then there is a user voice specifically for SQL team, and then goes down to the email alias that engineering leads like Alex actually monitors.
Close it out. Viacode, here is their homepage and their general email. And Victor and Alex, there's your contact information.
Thank you.
Is there anything else you want to close on? I have a couple closing slides, but is there anything you want to say about Viacode? I know that you guys do a lot more than just the SQL packs.
Oh yeah, we now, in addition to our management practice, like on-premise management practice, and enterprise development, we started moving into cloud managed services, where we help customers migrate into the cloud, optimize cost, tighten security, increase security depth. So, as well as we provide managed services. It could be either co-managed, where we help you with a certain function, whether you're managing your Kubernetes clusters or your kind of L1, L2 support, in addition to, or fully managed, where we help you completely focus on your business side of it, and we will take care of your monitoring and management needs.
Excellent.
So.
Cool. Well, thank you. Thank you both. Thank you both for joining me.
Thank you, Shawn. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Thank you, Shawn.
As we go, and I'm going to close out the slides. Today's presentation was brought to you by SquaredUp. They make the SCOM dashboards actually work. If you haven't had a chance to check out SCOM or check out SquaredUp for SCOM, definitely please take a look. If you have any questions, please give us a shout. Also, Cookdown, they make some interesting management packs to help you with and manage your SCOM implementation. My particular favorite is the alert tuning, because you can actually tune your landscape. Here are some coffee break resources. If you'd like to let us know what you want us to cover, please let us know at these addresses. You can sign up for future sessions at that link. Recordings are going to be published to the SCOMathon branded website for coffee break, and there will also be a YouTube playlist for the series. Thank you for attending, and have a good week.